What happens when one of Hollywood's most loved and celebrated comedians sits down for what everyone expected to be a simple, easygoing promotional interview, only to suddenly find himself completely under attack from a host who seemed absolutely determined to rip him apart? This is one of the most explosive and jaw-dropping exchanges that had the entire internet buzzing with disbelief. So make sure you smash that subscribe button and drop a comment down below, because what happens next is going to absolutely shock you. The energy inside the View studio that morning was already tense and electric. Adam Sandler had come on the show to promote his latest dramatic role, a major departure from the kind of comedy work he is known for, and it had actually been earning some seriously impressive critical praise. He sat down in his chair with that signature relaxed and easygoing smile of his, fully expecting the usual light-hearted promotional conversation that celebrities normally get on these kinds of shows. But Joy Behar had something completely different in mind. "So, Adam," Joy started, and her voice already had a sharp, cutting edge to it that immediately grabbed the attention of every single person in the studio. "I have to ask about this sudden pivot to serious acting. Are you finally admitting that your comedy career has run its course?" That question just hung in the air like a razor-sharp blade, and you could feel the tension instantly. Sandler's smile slipped for just a brief moment before he quickly pulled himself together. "Well, Joy, I wouldn't really call it sudden," he responded calmly. "I've actually been doing dramatic work for years now. I genuinely love getting to explore different sides of storytelling. But let's be honest here," Joy cut him off mid-sentence, leaning forward in her seat with an almost predatory gleam shining in her eyes. "Your last few comedies were absolutely torn apart by critics. They were box office disasters. So, are you just trying to salvage whatever is left of your reputation at this point?" The other hosts on the panel shifted around uncomfortably in their seats, and clearly sensing that something was off. Whoopi Goldberg shot Joy a sharp, warning look from across the desk, but Joy was just getting warmed up and showed absolutely no signs of slowing down. Sandler kept his composure remarkably well, though viewers watching closely could see his jaw tighten ever so slightly. "I think my fans would probably disagree with that assessment," Sandler replied carefully and deliberately. "My movies connect with people, and at the end of the day, that is what matters most to me. Not everyone has to like everything I do." "Connect with people?" Joy scoffed loudly, her voice rising with obvious disdain. "You mean connect with 12-year-old boys who think fart jokes are the absolute height of comedy? Seriously, Adam, when was the last time you actually made something intelligent?" The studio audience started to murmur uncomfortably, and the unease in the room was impossible to ignore. This was not the usual playful back-and-forth ribbing that guests typically expect when they appear on talk shows. This felt deeply personal, deliberately targeted, and honestly, almost cruel in the way it was being delivered. Sandler's response was measured and controlled, but there was a firmness behind every word. "Joy, I'm really not sure why you're being so hostile right now. I came on your show today to talk about my new film, and which actually deals with some pretty serious and heavy themes about family and loss. I was hoping we could have a real, meaningful conversation about that." "Oh, we can absolutely have a conversation," Joy fired right back without missing a beat. "But let's make it an honest one, shall we? Your so-called dramatic performances are really just you doing the same regular routine you always do, just with fewer laughs this time around." You're not fooling anyone into thinking you're suddenly some kind of serious, legitimate actor. The tension in that room had become absolutely thick enough to cut with a knife. Sandler's publicist, who was sitting just off camera, looked like she was seconds away from jumping in and pulling the plug on the whole thing, but Sandler held up a subtle hand in her direction to stop her from intervening. "You know what, Joy?" Sandler said, his voice still controlled and steady, but now carrying a new and unmistakable hardness to it. "I've been in this business for over 30 years. I've made movies that have brought genuine joy and happiness to millions and millions of people around the world. I've worked alongside some of the most talented actors and directors in all of Hollywood. If you want to sit here and tear me down for whatever personal reasons you might have, that is entirely your choice. But I am absolutely not going to just sit here quietly and let you disrespect my career or the fans who have supported me all these years." Joy let out a laugh, but it was sharp, bitter, and completely devoid of any warmth. "Personal reasons? Oh, this is not personal at all, Adam. This is simply about calling out mediocrity when I see it right in front of me. You've been coasting on the exact same juvenile, immature humor for decades now, making millions and millions of dollars while real. Genuine artists out there are struggling just to get their work seen by anyone." "Real artists?" Sandler's eyebrows shot straight up in surprise and disbelief. "So now you're telling me that comedy isn't real art? That entertainment isn't valuable? The movies I make employ hundreds and hundreds of people, actors, crew members, production staff, everyone. They give families something to laugh about together. They help people forget about their troubles and their stress for a couple of hours. Or if that isn't valuable, then honestly, I don't know what is." The other hosts on the panel tried desperately to jump in and steer the conversation in a different direction, but Joy was completely relentless and would not let up. "Please spare me the noble self-righteous speech about helping families," she said dismissively. "You're making complete garbage, and you know it deep down. When was the last time you truly challenged yourself as a performer? When was the last time you took a genuine risk?" Sandler's composure was visibly starting to crack at this point, and everyone could see it. His hands gripped the arms of his chair tightly, and his voice took on a level of intensity that genuinely surprised every single person who was watching. "You want to talk about taking risks, Joy? Let me tell you something about risks. Every single time I step in front of a camera, I am risking failure. Every single time I put myself out there for people to judge and criticize, that is a risk. And you know what the absolute biggest risk is? It's sitting across from someone who is supposed to be a professional interviewer and instead getting completely ambushed by someone who clearly walked in here with some kind of personal vendetta against me." The entire studio fell dead silent. The only sound was the quiet hum of the cameras continuing to roll. Joy's smile had transformed into something cold, calculating, and almost sinister. "Or a vendetta," she said slowly and deliberately. "Or maybe it's just someone who isn't afraid to speak the truth about Hollywood's golden boy who never actually grew up." That was the exact moment when everything in that studio completely changed. Sandler leaned forward in his chair, his eyes locked directly onto Joy's with an intensity that was almost frightening. And when he finally spoke, his voice carried a quiet fury that made every single person in that studio hold their breath. You know what, Joy?" Sandler said, his voice dangerously quiet and low. "I've been sitting here this entire time trying to be respectful, trying to be professional, trying to keep things civil, But you clearly walked into this interview today with a fully loaded agenda. So let me ask you something. What exactly have you contributed to entertainment? What joy have you actually brought into people's lives? Joy's face flushed a deep, bright red almost instantly. Excuse me? She snapped. I have been a professional broadcaster for decades. I've won awards. I've broken major stories. I've held powerful politicians accountable. And yet, here you are, Sandler continued, his voice growing stronger and more confident with every single word. Using your platform, this platform that millions of people watch, to tear down someone who has done nothing but try to make people laugh and feel good. You want to talk about taking the easy road? How about sitting behind a desk every single day and just throwing stones at people who actually put themselves out there and create things? That seems pretty easy to me. The other hosts on the panel looked absolutely frozen, like deer caught in headlights. One of the hosts tried to jump in and save the situation. Maybe we should take a quick break and come back to discuss the new movie, she suggested hopefully. But Sandler was not having any of it. No, let's finish this conversation right here, right now, Sandler said firmly. Joy started this whole thing, so let's see it all the way through to the end. You want to know about me challenging myself? I will tell you what is truly challenging. Trying to maintain your dignity and composure while someone who is supposed to be interviewing you instead decides to use their airtime to brutally attack your entire life's work. Joy slammed her hand down hard on the table, making a loud bang that echoed through the studio. Your life's work? She shot back. Making the exact same movie over and over and over again with your buddies while laughing all the way to the bank? That is not art, Adam. That is a scam. The audience gasped out loud, audibly and unmistakably. This had gone so far beyond just uncomfortable television. This had crossed into territory that was genuinely shocking and unprecedented for this kind of show. Sandler stood straight up from his chair, towering over the desk with a commanding presence. A scam? His voice was filled with pure incredulity. Lady, I have never promised anyone anything other than pure entertainment. People pay their hard-earned money to see my movies because they want to laugh. They want to escape from their problems. They want to feel good for 2 hours. And you know what? They get exactly what they pay for every single time. Can you honestly say the same thing about this show? Can you honestly tell me that people tune in expecting to watch a guest get ambushed, humiliated, and torn to shreds on live television? Joy shot up from her chair as well, matching his energy and standing her ground. People tune in expecting honesty. They expect someone to ask the tough, real questions instead of just lobbing easy softballs at celebrities who think they are completely untouchable. Tough questions? Sandler let out a laugh, but there was absolutely zero humor in it whatsoever. You actually think this is journalism? You genuinely believe that what you are doing right now is serving the public in some meaningful way? This is not journalism, Joy. This is a straight-up hit job, and every single person watching this at home can see it crystal clear. The camera operators literally did not know where to point their cameras. The other hosts sat completely frozen in their seats, totally unsure whether they should try to step in and intervene or simply let this absolutely unprecedented meltdown continue to play out on live television. Whoopi finally managed to find her voice and spoke up. Okay, both of you need to sit back down and lower your voices immediately. This is getting completely out of hand. But Joy was far beyond the point of reason at this stage. "Out of hand?" she fired back. "You know what is truly out of hand? Pretending that mediocrity deserves praise and celebration just because it happens to make money? As what is truly out of hand is giving massive platforms to people who contribute absolutely nothing meaningful or worthwhile to our culture." Sandler's eyes blazed with a fire that nobody in that studio had ever seen from him before. "Nothing meaningful? You really want to know what is meaningful, Joy? I will tell you exactly what is meaningful. Just last month, I received a letter from a mother whose son has autism. She wrote to me and told me that my movies are the only thing that makes her son laugh, the only thing that brings him pure, genuine joy in a world that is often incredibly cruel to kids like him. That is meaningful. That single letter is worth more than every snarky, bitter comment you have ever made on this entire show," Joy sneered dismissively, waving her hand. "Oh, please, spare me the heartwarming anecdotes and the sob stories. What one touching letter does not excuse decades of lowbrow garbage." "Lowbrow garbage?" Sandler's voice cracked with a powerful mixture of deep emotion and burning fury. "You want to know what is truly lowbrow? Sitting right here in that chair and tearing down someone's entire career for absolutely no reason other than your own bitterness and misery. You want to know what is truly garbage? Using your position and your influence to hurt people instead of lifting them up and encouraging them." The entire studio audience was completely and totally silent now. Hundreds of people watching this absolute train wreck unfold right in front of them in real time. Joy's face was twisted up with visible rage, but there was something else mixed in there too, something that looked almost like dark satisfaction at having successfully pushed Sandler all the way to his breaking point. "To hurt people?" Joy said defensively. "I am trying to hold you accountable for polluting our cultural landscape with your juvenile nonsense. Somebody has to have standards around here." "Standards?" Sandler threw both his hands up in the air in complete and utter disbelief. "Your standard is cruelty. Your standard is making guests feel uncomfortable and small for your own personal entertainment and ego. You want to talk about polluting the cultural landscape? Take a good, long, hard look in the mirror, Joy. Because you are everything, and I mean everything, that is wrong with media today." The tension in that room had become absolutely suffocating. You could practically feel it pressing down on everyone. Production assistants behind the scenes were signaling frantically from off-camera, waving their arms and trying to get someone's attention. But this confrontation had completely taken on a life of its own, and there was no stopping it now. Joy leaned all the way across the desk, her voice dropping down to a venomous, poisonous whisper. "At least, I am not a grown man making millions and millions of dollars by acting like a 12-year-old. At least I still have some dignity." That was the absolute final straw, the one that broke everything wide open. Sandler's composure completely and totally shattered into a million pieces, and what came next would be replayed, shared, and analyzed on social media for weeks and weeks to come. Sandler's face went completely red, a deep burning crimson, and when he finally spoke, his voice shook with a level of raw rage that absolutely nobody in that studio had ever witnessed from him before. "Dignity," he roared, his powerful voice echoing and bouncing off every wall in the studio. "You want to sit there and lecture me about dignity? You sit here every single day gossiping about people, spreading negativity and toxicity, tearing down anyone and everyone who dares to be successful or happy. That is your idea of dignity? That is your grand contribution to the world?" Joy opened her mouth to try to interrupt and get a word in, but Sandler was absolutely on a roll now. 30 long years of built-up frustration with critics, cynics, and people who looked down on his work was pouring out of him all at once, like a dam that had finally burst. "No, you do not get to talk anymore, Joy. You have had your say, plenty of it. Now it is my turn." His finger pointed directly at her, visibly trembling with raw, unfiltered emotion. "You know what takes real courage in this world? Getting up every single morning and making the conscious choice to spread joy instead of misery, choosing to make people laugh instead of making them feel small and worthless, choosing to actually build something positive instead of just sitting on the sidelines tearing everything and everyone else down." The other hosts sat there in complete and total stunned silence, absolutely shell-shocked by what they were witnessing. One host looked like she was on the verge of tears. Another had her mouth hanging wide open in pure shock. Whoopi was frantically gesturing and waving at the producers off camera, desperately trying to get someone to do something, but they seemed just as completely paralyzed and frozen by the incredible spectacle that was unfolding right before their eyes. "You think making people laugh is easy?" Sandler continued, and now his voice was cracking with genuine, deep emotion that could not possibly be faked. "You think it is simple to get up in front of millions and millions of people and try to bring some lightness and happiness into their lives? Every single joke is a risk. Every single movie is me putting my entire self out there to be judged and criticized by people exactly like you, people who have never created anything of their own, who have never tried to make another person happy, who have never once put their heart on the line." Joy's mouth opened and closed repeatedly, like a fish that had been pulled completely out of water. For the very first time during this entire brutal interview, she seemed genuinely rattled and caught off guard. "Adam, I think you are overreacting here," she managed to stammer out. "Overreacting?" Sandler's laugh was bitter, harsh, and completely humorless. "Overreacting, really? You just spent the last 20 minutes systematically trying to destroy my entire career on live national television, and now you think I am overreacting? You actually want to know what overreacting really looks like?" What happened in the very next moment would go on to become absolutely legendary in television history. Sandler reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. With shaking, trembling hands, he began scrolling through what appeared to be personal messages and emails from real people. "You want to hear about real people, Joy?" His voice grew noticeably stronger and more powerful as he began to read. "People who are not bitter, jaded critics sitting up in their ivory towers passing judgment on everyone else. Here is one from Jennifer in Ohio. She says my movies helped her get through the darkest period of her divorce. She said they gave her something to laugh about when she honestly thought she would never smile again." Joy tried desperately to cut in and shut it down. "Adam, this is really not necessary." "Oh, it is absolutely necessary," Sandler shot right back without hesitation. "Here is one from Michael in Texas. He says he watches my movies with his elderly father who has dementia, and they are the only thing that still makes the old man laugh. You still want to sit there and tell me that my work is meaningless garbage, Joy?" The studio audience began to murmur emotionally, and you could feel the energy in the room shifting dramatically. Some people in the crowd were actually crying. real, genuine tears streaming down their faces. The camera operators were capturing incredible shots of audience members wiping their eyes. Every single person in that room completely and totally invested in this raw, emotional, once-in-a-lifetime moment. Sandler's voice grew even louder, even more passionate and powerful. And here is another one from Sarah in Michigan. She is a single mother working 2 exhausting jobs just to make ends meet. And she says, my movies are how she unwinds after brutal 14-hour days. She says they remind her that it is okay to be silly sometimes. That laughter is not childish. It is necessary. Joy's face had gone completely pale, almost white as a sheet. She clearly had not expected this kind of turn in the conversation. She had not prepared for the possibility that Sandler would come armed with his own powerful ammunition that would hit even harder than anything she had thrown at him. You sit here in your comfortable, cushy chair, Sandler continued, and now his voice was absolutely booming through every corner of the studio. Making 6 figures a year just to tell people why they should not enjoy the things that make them happy. But out there in the real world, far away from this studio, people are struggling every single day. People are hurting. People are desperate for reasons to smile. And if my stupid, juvenile, lowbrow movies, as you call them, can give those people even a moment of relief and happiness, then I am deeply and fiercely proud of every single one of them. The emotion in his voice was raw, genuine, and completely real. This was not acting. This was not a performance. This was not some rehearsed speech. This was a man standing up and passionately defending not just his career, but his entire life's mission and purpose. Joy finally managed to find her voice again, but when it came out, it was noticeably smaller and weaker than it had been before. I am not saying people should not enjoy entertainment, Adam. I am just saying that as artists, do we not have some kind of responsibility to challenge ourselves, to create something with real substance? Sandler stepped even closer to the desk, his eyes absolutely blazing with conviction. Substance? You want to talk about substance? Let me tell you something about real substance. Substance is a kid fighting cancer who laughs at one of my movies and completely forgets about his pain and fear for 2 whole hours. Substance is a family sitting together in a movie theater, sharing genuine joy and happiness, instead of sitting apart staring at their phones in silence. Substance is making the deliberate choice to put positivity and light into the world instead of cynicism and darkness. He paused for just a brief moment, collecting himself slightly, but his voice remained absolutely strong and unwavering. You know what actually lacks substance, Joy? This interview, this attack, this desperate, ugly need to tear down someone who has never done a single thing to hurt you. That is what truly lacks substance. The studio was dead quiet, completely and eerily silent except for the steady sound of cameras rolling and someone somewhere in the audience quietly sobbing. Even the production crew members, people who had seen everything over the years, seemed completely transfixed and mesmerized by what they were witnessing unfold. Joy made one last, a desperate attempt to somehow regain control of the situation. Look, Adam, I think we just got off on the wrong foot here. Wrong foot? Sandler's voice was absolutely dripping with incredulity. Joy, you did not get off on the wrong foot. You walked into the studio today with both barrels fully loaded, completely ready and prepared to take me down, for reasons that I will honestly never understand. And you know what? You failed. because at the end of the day, I know exactly who I am. And I know exactly what I have contributed to this world. And I know that when I go home tonight and put my head on my pillow, I will sleep peacefully and soundly, knowing that somewhere out there, right now, people are laughing and smiling because of something that I created. Then he looked directly into the camera lens, speaking straight to every single person watching at home. To everyone out there who has ever been told that their joy does not matter, who has ever been made to feel embarrassed or ashamed for finding happiness in simple, ordinary things, do not let anyone steal that from you. Life is already hard enough without people constantly trying to take away the things that make you smile. Then he slowly turned back to face Joy, and his voice dropped down to something quiet, but absolutely firm and unshakable. Joy, I truly hope that someday you find whatever it is that you are really looking for inside, because this is not it. Hurting people is not it. Tearing others down is not it. And with that, Adam Sandler turned around and walked right off that set, leaving behind a completely stunned and speechless studio audience and a host who finally, at long last, understood that she had picked the wrong fight with the wrong person on the wrong day. The camera lingered on Joy's face for several long, uncomfortable seconds, capturing a moment of what looked almost like deep regret and realization, before the screen finally cut away to a commercial break. That interview would go on to be dissected, analyzed, debated, and discussed for months and months afterward. It became the absolute perfect example of what happens when someone severely underestimates the incredible power of genuine passion and the very real danger of unnecessary cruelty. It served as a powerful reminder that behind every public figure, behind every celebrity name and famous face, there is a real human being with real feelings. And sometimes, just sometimes, when that person gets pushed too far, even the nicest and most easygoing person in the entire room will stand up and fight back with everything they have. So what do you think about that absolutely explosive and unforgettable confrontation? Drop a comment down below and let me know your honest thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone who was trying their hardest to tear you down? And do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more incredible stories just like this one.